I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
Here we're back with another playthrough of Leaving Earth, the base game including the Mercury expansion. We do have one Mercury mission, namely Mercury Sample Return. This is my 8th playthrough, and for the last two, I've actually decided not to switch out the missions that are available. This is mission level hard. But I've just decided to change out the exploration tiles like Mars, Phobos, Ceres, Mercury itself, Venus, the Moon obviously, and suborbital flight and the solar radiation, because this is a very tough game with kind of a steep learning curve, not because the rules are problematically written, because they are actually quite clear, but because there is just so much to take into account and also so much to learn, and experience plays a very important role in this game. All of the information, with the exception of what can be explored and what you find when you get there, is in the public domain. And in addition to not knowing what you will find when you get there, or if you can even land, which would mean you reduce, if you can't land, for example, you would reduce the number of available missions, because if you can't land on Venus, then the Venus lander mission becomes invalid. The only other piece of unknown is the outcomes that you draw. So other than that, all of the information is always available to everyone. So you always know how much an Atlas rocket costs, how much it weighs. So if you want to, you can always do your calculations, even without buying anything, paying for anything. There's also some things that you may not start out doing. Certain maneuvers, like for example, separation and docking, which are subsumed under the heading of rendezvous, which can actually make a huge difference. I will do a sit down on this game, but this is not the time and place for this. Today I just want to do a playthrough and work on a couple of strategies that I have developed overnight and last night after I played another session, to think if they will play out in my favor. So it's now the year 1956, we've got 25 units of payment, and what should we be looking into? Yes, I believe we should be looking at a Venus landing. Now Venus is over here. In order to get there, we need to launch from Earth into suborbital flight, which has a difficulty of 3. Then we have to get into Earth orbit. We have to travel into the inner planet's transfer area, which is a difficulty of 3, but takes 1 year. Then we have to go to Venus orbit, which also takes 1 year and has a difficulty of 3, and then we would need to land. Now, landing from Venus orbit on Venus has a difficulty of 0. And in order to fulfill the Venus lander requirements, all you need to have is a working probe or capsule on Venus. So a probe is enough. So we will be using blasters. ion thrusters. What am I thinking? So the first thing that we know is we have a probe that we would like to place on Venus. And the probe has a weight of 1. So we have a payload of 1 to begin with. And Venus orbit to Venus is 0. 1 times 0 means you don't need any thrust to do this. So then we need to see, in order to get to Venus orbit, we have to overcome a difficulty of 3. To get from the inner planet's transfer to Venus orbit. Inner planet transfer to Venus orbit has a difficulty of 3, and payload is 1, and we have 1 year. We need to spend 1 year on doing this. A payload of 1 over the course of 1 year can be transported by 1 thruster, actually by one ion thruster, actually by 1/4 of a 1, but you know, so we need 1 ion thruster to overcome this, and this one has a weight of 1. In order to get from Earth orbit to inner planet transfer, we also have to spend 1 year, and it also takes it also has a difficulty of 3. So we can stick with our 1 ion thruster because ion thrusters do not get expended, they stay with us. So we have the Earth orbit to inner planet transfer is also a difficulty of 3. The payload is still only 1 because we still use our ion thrusters. So that doesn't change. We have still the ion thruster from up there. But then we need to get the ion thruster itself and our probe into Earth orbit, which has a difficulty of 5. And you can't use ion thrusters for this. So in order to overcome a difficulty of 5 with a payload of 2, because the ion thruster itself will not be pushing itself forward, it won't be propelling itself forward, so it will be part of the payload, you would need 2 Atlas rockets. Because 1 Atlas rocket can can transport 1/2 of a payload, so 2 would be doing 2 4/5. So we need 2 Atlas rockets. For a payload of 2 Atlas rockets. And that would be suborbital flight to orbit. Difficulty 5. 2 Atlas rockets weigh 8 together, so now our payload is then 10. And the 10 is the payload that we need to propel on launch from Earth into suborbital. There the difficulty is 3, so we need a thrust of 30 to just take the payload. So in order to propel a payload of 10 across a difficulty of 3, we need 2 Atlas rockets, because 1 Atlas rocket can propel a payload of 5 over difficulty 3. So on launch, we again need 2 Atlas rockets. So in order to do all of this, to get to Venus and land, we're going to need 1 probe, 1 ion thruster, and 4 Atlas rockets. So that's our plan. That's what we would like to do. In order to actually do it, what we need to do is we need to start spending money. So we're going to buy, I'm just going to put the bank over here in the Ring of the Lord of the Rings. For 10, we're going to buy Atlas rockets. Or we're going to start researching how Atlas rockets actually work. Now, important, and this is something that you have to remember, and I didn't in the beginning, a probe can basically, in inverted commas, land on any surface that is landable without having the landing or the re-entry requirements fulfilled. Why? They just basically pop down. They basically parachute down. You don't really have to have the landing requirements fulfilled, or the they can't burn up either. So you really need to pay attention to what it says on the card, what the requirement is for the card to for the actual spaceship or spacecraft to operate. So now we've got 3 outcome cards from the Atlas rockets. We're going to place them here, and then we're going to buy iron thrusters, or we're going to develop them. So let's see, iron thrusters, yada yada yada. Where are they? Here they are. We also pay 10 for this, and we draw 3 outcome cards for those. We don't look at them, so they are basically unknown information. We put them here. We have 5 left, and for these 5 we are actually going to buy 1 Atlas rocket, but we could in theory launch it, but that doesn't help us because we can't afford to do research in either successful launches or failures because we simply don't have any money anymore. So we have got 1 Atlas rocket now. Next year, 1957 rolls around, we get our money, our funding for our research. We need 1 probe and 1 iron thruster, so we're going to buy those. And this time I'm actually going to go full risk with this one. So, and then we need 3 more iron thrusters, 3 more Atlas rockets, which we will buy. 15. 1, 2, 3. We have 8 left. And I'm not going to go that full risk. I am going to build 1 spacecraft using 1 Atlas rocket. And let's see. And I'm going to launch it into suborbital flight. And we're going to draw 1 result, and it is a success. That's not what we wanted, but okay. So, because now we can't get rid of it, but that's fine. So we know at least 1/3 of a success is possible. So we put this away. The Atlas rocket was expended, but we're going to buy 1 immediately. We have 3 left. Yeah, and we're going to buy 1 more probe and 2 more iron thrusters. Next year, we are now ready to build a spaceship and start on our mission. So first of all, we're going to put a probe and an iron thruster together. So we're going to strap the probe to the iron thruster, and then we're going to strap 2 Atlas rockets to this whole thing. And then we're going to strap 1 more Atlas rocket to it, and then we're going to put this onto an Atlas rocket, and this Atlas rocket, the first one, is going to launch into suborbital flight. So it's going to push a payload of, and this is where we can see if my math was correct, of 8, 12, 13, 14, across a difficulty of 3. Sorry, I need 2 Atlas rockets to do this. So we push a payload of 10 across a difficulty of 3. That's done. Okay. So now we need to draw an outcome card. So these ones go away anyway. So regardless of the outcome, these have been expended. Unless, of course, it's, yeah, well, it might be. And it is a success, which we're going to remove immediately because we don't want to see this card again. So we're going to pay 10 for this. So it's going to go to the bank. So that's good. We are now in suborbital flight. Now is the next important milestone. We need to get this one from suborbital flight into Earth's orbit. We're going to launch our second battery of Atlas rockets, which is going to push a payload of 2 across a difficulty of 5, which is easily done for them because they can do, each of them can propel 1 plus 2/5 of a payload across difficulty 5. So we draw another outcome, and it is another success. Now this is brilliant. I shuffled these several times. Okay, very well done. But we're not done yet. So now we're in inner orbit. In order to get to Venus, what we have to do is we have to go from Earth orbit into the inner planets transfer. This is going to take us 1 year. So for the rest of this year, I could potentially do other things, but not with this spacecraft. However, what we did is we fired the ion thrusters. We have to draw an outcome. And it was a success, which is good. So that's brilliant. So we now just shuffle these up. But that's all we can do with this spacecraft. It can't do anything else this year. So we can't push it over here. We just have to leave it here because it's going to take the whole year to cross the inner planets transfer. We have $5 left. So we're going to buy another Atlas rocket. And that's all we are going to do now. So now we have 1959. This time unit comes off, or this time token comes off. We now can move this into Venus orbit, like this. But now we are experiencing radiation. So let's see what radiation tells us. And radiation tells us no significant radiation, which is good. So it gets another time token. We cannot descend onto Venus now. We also cannot do any surveying. Why? It does say here that we could in theory survey Venus, but we don't have the surveying capability. In order to find out what's down there, we actually have to land or get the surveying capability. So now we fired our ion thrusters one more time to push into Venus orbit. So we have to draw another outcome. So here are the ones that I shuffled up earlier, but I've decided to always roll a die on subsequent draws. And I roll a 5, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And it is another success, but we are going to get rid of this and pay 10. Sorry, the bank is over here. And these two go away. So, now we have to wait another year before we can land, but that's fine. Now let's look at another possible thing we could do. We could work on our missions to Mars. We have several ones that we can take. We can take a Mars survey, we can do a Mars landing, and we can do a man on Mars. Now Mars survey and Mars landing can be done together because you can go into Mars orbit and survey Mars, or you can simply land on Mars. And if you survive the landing, or if your probe survives the landing, you've both surveyed Mars because you now know what's there, and you've also landed successfully. So we're going to do this. We're not going to send out any humans at this stage yet. So let's see. In order to go down to Mars, we just need to overcome a difficulty of 0. So the payload is always 1 because we have 1 probe. So we don't need to worry about going down to Mars because we do not have to go back up from Mars. So we're good. So the payload is 1, but we need to get to the to Mars orbit from the inner planet transfer. Now that's going to take us 2 years because we have 2 time tokens on this one. So we have a payload of 1, which we need to push over a difficulty of 4. Or we can go straight from Earth orbit, which takes us 3 years and has a difficulty of 5. Let's take a look at what our capabilities are with regard to ion thrusters. If we give an ion thruster, 1 ion thruster, 3 years, over a difficulty of 5, it can propel 2. That would be enough. Because the time limit is always the same, because if we go through the inner, it takes us 1 year plus 2, or we can go straight and it takes us 3 years. So we are going to take 1 ion thruster, which has a weight of 1, and it takes us over a difficulty of 5. It's going to carry a payload of 2, that's not a problem, and that's from Earth orbit onto Mars orbit, into Mars orbit. And that's a difficulty of 5, but 1 ion thruster is enough because it's going to take 3 years anyway. Then we are here and we have this this payload of 2, which we need to propel into Earth's orbit, and we already know how this works because it's exactly the same thing that we did when we tried to push something into Venus orbit. So we need 4 Atlas rockets for this. So we have a probe, we have an ion thruster, we have 1 Atlas rocket already. So all we need is 3 more Atlas rockets, and we do have the money to pay for those. 1, 2, 3. And we're just going to risk it because this is going to be a long-term thing anyway, and probes and ion thrusters are actually quite cheap. So we're going to build another spaceship, put it here, and we're going to launch it. For this we need 2 Atlas rockets again, because together 2 Atlas rockets can push a payload of 10 across a difficulty of 5, and we have exactly 10. So that's that. We draw an outcome, and that was a major failure. Okay, a major failure means explosion destroys the spacecraft, so all of these go away. We cannot remove the major failure because we don't have any money. However, we now know that what we need to do is we need to, in the next year, and this is the only way you can actually do it. You can't now just say, okay, I'm just going to pay 5 to get rid of this the next year. You actually have to relaunch. So we have to pay 10 altogether. So now it's 1960. We get this back. We get our money back. As Margaret Thatcher was wont to say, I want my money back. 5, we buy an Atlas rocket. We're going to build a spaceship with it. We're going to launch it into suborbital flight. We know it's going to be a major failure. We pay our 5 to do the research as to why it failed, and that's it. The Atlas rocket is gone, but that's fine. So we have 15 left, and for those 15 we are going to buy 3 Atlas rockets. Sorry, I forgot. This one is now ready to land. So it's now landing on Venus, and we will see what happens. Let's see. Venus is... Oceans of liquid water supplies are available, so we could land. We get the Venus lander mission completed. And if we wanted to, we could actually bring people to Venus because they can get supplies there. That's brilliant. So we have 3 Atlas rockets. But we need 4. And then we need 1 probe. And we are going to buy 1 probe and several ion thrusters. Okay, so we're now going to build a spaceship. It could still go wrong because we don't know what else happens to the ion thrusters. So, going to do the same thing again. We're going to launch, blip, 2 Atlas rockets to propel a payload of 10. 2 more Atlas rockets to bring us into Earth's orbit. And now we're going to move into Mars orbit, but this is going to take us 3 years. So we have to fire the ion thrusters 3 times. So first is now. Let's draw a outcome, and it is a success, so we're lucky. So we know we have a 50% chance next time around for this to also be a success. So now this takes the whole year. The year comes to an end. This one comes off. 1961. We need to refire the ion thrusters. We're going to draw a card. So we're going to roll a die. On a 1, 2, 3, it's the first one. On a 4, 5, 6, it's the second. We roll a 6, and it is a success. And we're going to get rid of this. We're going to pay our 10 to understand why we were successful. Put this back here. We have 10. We have 15 left. We should look into putting someone into orbit. In order to do this, we need to research re-entry because we have to get the people back. So we're going to get re-entry. Draw 3 outcomes for this. And we are going to buy 1 more Atlas rocket. And that's the end of the year, 1962. This one comes off. We're still nowhere near Mars. We're still one year away from Mars. So now we need to fire the thruster 1 more time. And it is a success. That was really lucky. So we get to remove this one for free though. We don't have to pay for this. So in the next year, 1963, we will be able to land on Mars. And hopefully we can land there. I mean, worst case scenario, it's inhospitable and the spacecraft gets destroyed. But then all of the Mars, from a gaming perspective, once you identify that a planet cannot be landed upon at all of the related missions become invalidated. So from a gaming perspective, how the game works is you need to beat the tableau, all of the mission points on the tableau, by 50% plus 1. But if it now turns out that a couple of missions cannot be fulfilled, they get removed, so the actual number of beatable points is reduced. Okay, so now we want to see if we can do re-entry. So we're going to take a Vostok capsule. We're going to pay 2 for it. We're going to strap it to another Atlas rocket, so we need 2 Atlas rockets. Let me see. We have a 6 here. Or are we going to get a Soyuz to do this? Yeah, we're going to take a Soyuz. Let's do this because we can do 2 things in one go. We get a Soyuz rocket. First we pay for the research. Blip. And we're going to buy 1 Soyuz, and maybe we are lucky. This is now a risk, but you know, we don't put anyone on it, so it doesn't matter. 1 Soyuz rocket can propel 17 across a difficulty of 3. We have an Atlas rocket and a Vostok together, they weigh 6, so easily done. It's up here. And then the remaining Atlas rocket can easily push, no it can't actually, so we need 2 Atlas rockets. Okay, but it's still possible because the Soyuz can lift 17 2/3. Okay, so we're going to build another spaceship. Soyuz fires, let's see what happens. And it is a success, which is good. We can't research it, but still it means that this one worked. So now 2 of these Atlas rockets are going to propel one Vostok across a difficulty of 5. We don't have to draw any outcomes because we've fully researched those. Now the Vostok capsule is in Earth's orbit. We're going to leave it there. It can't get lost, it will just keep orbiting. And why am I leaving it here? Because I want to be able to research re-entry. And if it's a failure, I do want to remove the failure, or if it's a success, I do want to research the success, but I don't have any money. So now we're in 1963, this comes off at the end of 1962, and now we can do a couple of things this turn without even having to pay. First, we're going to land on Mars. Difficulty 3, so we're just going to plummet down to Mars. And it says, seasonal growths of plant life, supplies available. So we have researched Mars, surveyed it. We know what's on there, so we get this advance or this achievement, and we've also successfully landed. So now we have, if we were to play this according to the rules and we were playing for points, we would have achieved 23 points at this stage by 1963 at the beginning, which is not bad. Next up, we're going to see what happens. We're going to see Earth orbit re-entry into suborbital flight. Let's see what happens. We draw a card, and the outcome is a minor failure. A minor failure means that the capsule is damaged, but the occupants survive. That's fine. So what this means is we pay 5. It comes down to Earth, but it's not broken. It's not destroyed. It's just broken. So we turn it to its damaged side. So we save 2 million or whatever it is, because we can repair it, and that's for free. Okay, so that was that. I do want to keep researching the Soyuz, so I'm going to buy another Soyuz rocket for 8. And we're just going to fire it and see what happens. We have 3 outcomes. We're going to roll a die, and it's a 2, so it's the first one. It's a success, which we're going to remove by paying for it. The Soyuz is expended. We have 2 left, and for those 2 we are going to buy 2 probes. So we are now going to do the following. This spacecraft is now sitting there. We're just going to put these cards here because we know that there is a spacecraft, but I'm going to retrieve the token. I can have as many tokens as I like, but I don't want to dig out ones from somewhere else. So, okay, so these are the Soyuz outcomes. It's the end of the year. We repair our Vostok. It's 1964. Take this back. So what are we going to do next? We are going to try and put a man into Earth's orbit. There is no way of mitigating re-entry problems, so that's impossible. So we're going to take 2 Soyuz. That's 16. And we're going to, no, we're actually only going to get 1 Soyuz. And we're going to fire it. And we get a minor failure, which means it is not destroyed, it's just broken. And we remove this for 5. And we're going to buy another Soyuz. And we have 4 left, and we're going to just, I guess we are going to buy an Apollo, just because we can. Yeah. Next year, 1965, we repair our 1 Soyuz that crashed. So this one is actually back here. We get our money. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take a Soyuz, or actually 2, and we're going to go straight for Earth's orbit with the Vostok. And let's draw the last Soyuz outcome. It's a success, which we can remove for free. That's lucky. So now Soyuz is fully researched. We understand how they work and we understand their flaws. And now we're going to bring down this one. And we draw a re-entry card. So we have 2 left. So we need to roll a die. And it's a 6. And that's a major failure. It's a good thing nobody was inside, because the spacecraft is completely destroyed. But we remove it. That's that. This one goes back. But I think we should work on the lunar sample return. And now this is going to get interesting, because the payload changes. You need to have a probe to go down to the moon. But once you're there and you collect a sample, your payload goes up by 1. Since you're using a probe of 1, it doubles. So, in order to get to the moon, to get up from the moon with a sample, provided that we can get a sample, and we believe we will, our payload is 2. And we need to put it across a difficulty of 2. And that would require 2 Junos or 1 Atlas. Since we haven't researched the Junos, we're going to take 1 Atlas for this. And that is lunar launch. However, to get down to lunar orbit, we only have a payload of 1 for the probe and 4 for the Atlas, so it's a total of 5. So that's a different payload. So we have 5 for the lunar landing, and the difficulty is also 2. And for this, in order to push 5 over a difficulty of 2, we also need 1 Atlas, which brings the so that's that. And then we're going to do a rendezvous. Okay. So that's what's going to happen. Because in order to come back, we're going to use a ion thruster. Because going back, we only have a payload of 2, because we can sink without any problems here. And a thruster can easily move, and we're just going to give it time. We're going to give it 2 years to push over here. Having said this, we are now at 9 payload. And in order to push this across there for 3 years, we would need, for 1 year, we would need, for 2 years if we took 4, for 3 years if we took 3. We're going to take 3 ion thrusters. To push this over here. So 3 ion thrusters and 2 years or 3 years. To get here, but back it's only a payload of 2 across a difficulty of 3. Which will take them, if I have 3, that's actually just 1 year. Okay, so that's fine. So we have a total payload going up into space of 4 ion thrusters plus 1 probe, which of 3 ion thrusters and 1 probe, which is a payload of 4. And in order to overcome, okay, so we have a payload of 4, which we need to propel across difficulty 3, which could be done by 1 Atlas. Which increases our weight to 8. And you can use 2 Soyuz to push this across difficulty 3. Okay, yes. Okay, so I think I've got this covered. First of all, we need a probe. We need 4 ion thrusters. Or did we say 3? 3 across 3 years is 12. Yeah, that's 3. We only need 3. So we have a total weight of 4. We need to push this into Earth's orbit. We're using a Atlas for this. And in order to push all of this up there, we need 2 Soyuz. And we don't have enough money to buy those. So what we're going to do is we're going to research re-entry, rendezvous instead, because we will be using this this maneuver. So that's 3 outcomes. And for the last remaining 5, we are going to we're going to get a we're going to get a we're going to recruit a an astronaut. Yeah, and we're also going to move this here because the Vostok is planted safely on here. Okay. Now what are you? Oh yeah, this one got destroyed, didn't it? Yeah, so this one goes away. Let's just make a brief check. Re-entry has one unresearched result. Okay, that's okay. It's now 1966. And for our endeavor, we require 3 Atlas and 2 Soyuz. So we need 2 more Atlas. And 2 Soyuz are 16, which we don't have. Oh, no, we don't. That's not good. So we're just going to buy 1. 8. And we have 7 left. We're just going to buy 1 Atlas, because we can always use those, 1 probe, and 1 ion thruster. Okay, next year, 1967. We need 1 Soyuz. Okay, so we have 3 Atlas in total, 1, 2, 3, 3 ion thrusters and 1 probe. We're going to build a spaceship with these, or spacecraft I should say, that's what they call them, spacecraft. So we're going to use 2 Soyuz to push our payload of, what was I thinking when I put this together? Five, 9. Sorry, I have to redo my maths here. That's 4, 8, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I have to push 16 across a difficulty of 3. Oh, that's 1 Soyuz only. Okay. Yeah, but I need an Atlas to bring this back. So I need this one, it's payload, and this one is also payload for the landing. Then to get there we have 3 ion thrusters and 1 probe. So I need to push all of this across a difficulty of 5. And there the payload is 4, 8, 12. 12 across a difficulty of 5 is 2 Soyuz. Is this really enough? So yeah, this is gonna push it over a difficulty of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 12. Yeah, that's gonna be enough. But then we have a payload of 18, 20, 22, 30 to cross 3. And that is that would be 10. $10, 15, yeah, so it's going to be 8, 13 for one Soyuz, and 1 Atlas. Okay, we've got this. We have a payload of 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 21, 30, which we need to push across a difficulty of 3. And we have a payload of 17, 27, 32. Blip. We have a payload of 4, 8, 10, 12 to be pushed across a difficulty of 5. That's 2 Soyuz because they can push 14 altogether. Now we're here. Now we need to get to lunar orbit. The payload at the moment is 5, 9. We have 3 ion thrusters, and 3 ion thrusters across a difficulty of 3 will take 3 years to complete this mission. So we're going to give it 3 time codes. 1, 2, 3. We have 5 left. No, we have 4 left. For these 4 we're going to buy, what are we going to buy? We're going to buy 2 Vostocks. Year end. We don't need to check for the ion thrusters anymore, they're fully researched. 1968 rolls around, get all of this. We fire the second thruster. We are now going to take a Vostok and we're going to push it into orbit. It's one Atlas, which gives us a payload of 6. Push a payload of. So for this we would need 1 Soyuz, well 2 Atlas would be enough, which would give us a payload of 10, and 10 to overcome 3 would be 2 Atlas, so we need 4 Atlas. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 Atlas. We're going to build a spacecraft. So, first payload is 10 across a difficulty of 3, which is done by 2 Atlas rockets. Second one is a payload of 2 pushed across a difficulty of 5, also done by 2 Atlas rockets. So now the Vostok is going to try re-entry, and we're going to draw the last re-entry possibility, and it's a success, which we can remove for free. So now we are safe enough to put a man into orbit without having to fear that he will die. And the Vostok is returned safely to Earth and recovered. So we're going to buy another Atlas. Year end. This time token comes off. 1969 rolls around. We're going to take a Vostok capsule. We're going to put John Glenn in it. He doesn't weigh anything. So now what we're going to do is we are going to do the same maneuver. We need 4 Atlas rockets in total. Difficulty 3 for a payload of difficulty 5 for a payload of 2 is overcome by 2 Atlas rockets. 1, 2. And then we have to overcome a difficulty of 3 with a payload of 10, which also requires 2 Atlas rockets. 2 Atlas rockets, here we are. And we're going to propel Mr. Glenn into space. So 1, 2. Mr. Glenn is now in Earth orbit, and we're going to attempt re-entry, which we know will be successful. He's back safe and sound, and we get a man in orbit achievement. We still have plenty of money left, which is a nice thing. So we're going to take we're going to buy a Soyuz for this. And that's all we're going to do. We're not going to spend those 2. This one comes off. It's 1970. So now it's going to be interesting, because now we're going to try and do a separation. For this, we're going to draw the top card of the rendezvous, and it is a success. So now we have 2 spacecraft. What does that mean? We now have a spacecraft that consists of the probe and 2 Atlas rockets, and the 3 ion thrusters are basically orbiting. So now we're going to add a second one. So now we're going to descend to push the payload of 5 down a difficulty of 2. We need 1 Atlas. So the Atlas fires. So now we're down here. Now we need to see what we actually find on the moon. And we find valuable minerals, and sample on Earth is worth 25, which is cool, because now we're going to collect said sample. We add it to the spacecraft, which now weighs 2 instead of just the 1. We're going to retrieve the probe. We're now going to fire the Atlas. It goes up here. Blip. And now what we're going to try and do is we're going to try and attempt a rendezvous again to put the probe onto the ion thrusters. So we have 2 outcomes. We're going to roll a die. We rolled a 4, so that's number 2. And that was a major failure. So we get rid of this immediately. Let's see what this means. No docking, separation, damage chosen component. So the probe is damaged. We can't repair it, so we will just put it away. Why can't we repair it? Because it's in space. We're going to get rid of the moon sample. We didn't make it, but that's fine. We're just going to leave it here because we will reattempt this. This one goes away. The iron thrusters, however, are still up there. They're fine. So now what we need to do is, what we can do on a second try is we can go down, and we have a payload of 5 because we need one Atlas to come up with a, okay, we need one Atlas rocket to propel the weight of 9.5 up into lunar orbit. We will have 2 because we have the probe and we have the moon sample. So this means we have 8, which we have 6, which we need to push, or we have 5 to push down, so we need 1 more Atlas rocket, so we need 2 Atlas rockets for this. And it means we have a total payload of 8, 9. That needs to make the lunar crossing for a year. 9. Difficulty is 3. That's 2 more Atlas rockets. We have 2 Atlas plus 2. Atlas is a total weight of 12, 13, plus the probe is 14. And in order to get 14 into Earth orbit, we would need 1 Soyuz and 2 Atlas, which have a weight of, no, actually it's across the difficulty of, what am I saying? No, we need 2 Soyuz for this. And then they weigh in turn 9, so that's 18. So we're now looking at 32. And we need to push 32 across a weight across a difficulty of 3, which also takes 2 Soyuz. Yeah. So we need 2 more Soyuz. So in total, to pull this off, what we're going to do is we are going to get 4 Atlas and 4 Soyuz. We have 1 Soyuz. We have a probe, that's fine. So we have 4 Atlas. This is 4. 1, 2, 3. We're going to wait for the next year and the refunding, I should say. So we're going to get 1 more Atlas. And we need 4 Soyuz, so that's 24, which we don't have. We do have 16 though. 2 Soyuz. And we have 4 left, which we can't do anything with, so we're not going to do anything with them. We're going to put this here, get the money back. 1 more Soyuz. And now we're going to do this. Let's see if I did the math right. So we have a probe. And we need to push this probe down to the moon, and that's going to be across a difficulty of 2. It's going to be 1 Atlas. But we also need to push a 2 up across, that's also 1 Atlas. So we have 5. That's this one bringing it down. Then we're going to do a rendezvous to push it back up, but now we need to push all of this, a payload of 9, across into lunar orbit, difficulty 3, that's to Atlas. And then we have 8, 16, 17 that we need to push into Earth's orbit for 5. 16, that's going to be 8, 16, 17, it's going to be 17 across a difficulty of 5. That's 14, and 14 and 3 Atlas, which now increases the total payload to 4, 8, 12. I'm not sure why I'm doing it this complicated. Yeah, because I don't want to spend as much time. That's why. 12, 16, 20, 30, 39, 47. We need to push 47 across a difficulty of 3, which is 34, 35, 35, 40, 35, 40, yeah, we need one more Soyuz, which we're going to buy next year. Just going to leave the 8 right there, and then we're going to make this happen. Suborbital flight. Payload of 8, 26, 27, 31, 35, 39, 43, 47. 3 Soyuz, easily. Okay, so we're now in suborbital flight. We have to go into Earth's orbit, and here the payload is all of this. Two Soyuz across, that's 14. Um, 15. Yeah. So we're gonna push all of this over here. These are gone, and we have another payload of 9, which we need to push across 3. This is the payload 8, 12, 16, 20, 21. 21 across 5. Now we're here, we're going to go into lunar orbit, we're going to land, we're going to get the moon sample, we're going to rise up again, we're going to make our way back, re-entry is free, or descent is free, and we're back on Earth. And I'm pretty sure I did the math right. So, because this is 2 across, a difficulty of 3 is on Atlas, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so here we are. And we've now got a sample which is actually worth 25, so we're going to get this in addition. So now what we would like to do is we would like to send a person into space. Space in this case means inner-planet transfer, I suppose, or possibly lunar orbit, anything that is outside Earth's orbit and not in suborbital flight. So we're going to put John Glenn on a Vostok, and we're going to push this into Earth orbit. And we're going to do this, it weighs 2. And we're going to so we're going to buy 2 Soyuz to do this. We're going to do this the easy way. So we're going to take 2 Soyuz to do this, 16. And next year rolls around. We now get more money because we get an additional 25. And then we need to push this across there. So we need to push 3. We need to push 2 across 3. So we're going to buy 1 Atlas, and we're going to take this out of the 25. So we have 20 of those left. But we also need to push the 6 across the difficulty of 3, which is another 2 Atlas. So these ones we need to go in order to get back. And these ones we need to push all of this, the 6 over there. Okay, so now we have a total payload of 8, 12, 14 to push into Earth's orbit. And 14 over 5 is done by 2 Soyuz. And then we have a total payload of 18, 22, 30, 32. And to get 32 across 3 is another 2 Soyuz. We have the 25, we have the 20 left. That's 16, so we can get the 2 Soyuz. And we're going to make this happen now. 2 Soyuz push Mr. Glenn into suborbital flight in his Vostok. 2 more Soyuz are going to push him into Earth's orbit. 1 Atlas, 2 Atlas are going to push him in his Vostok and another Atlas into into lunar orbit, which means we have a man in space. And now we're going to use the 1 Atlas to push him back. And then he's going to start his quick descent onto Earth, which is 0, and he doesn't need to land because he just falls right into the ocean, and is rescued from there. And we have just completed the man in space. By 1974, we've put a man in space, a man in orbit, a lander on Mars. We did a Mars survey and we put a lander on Venus. 16, 20, 29, and we have still lots left. So we still, have a lot of stuff that we could do. Oh, and we've done the lunar sample return, sorry. So we have actually won against the game because we have 39, 43 left, and we have we actually won? 31, 21, 33, 41. So we still haven't won. However, obviously, well, actually, one could attempt a Mercury retrieval, sample retrieval. That would take that would take 2 years in time if we have enough funding. No, it actually takes 4 years, so we can't make it. So we again haven't managed to do it. And I think also it is because you could start all of these missions in parallel. The problem is you don't have enough funding to actually make them happen. But this is by far the best outcome I've ever had so far. Also because there was no solar radiation, that did help, and also because we had the lunar orbit where we get an additional 25. If we had done this a lot earlier, I would have had the funding to begin with, you know, but you don't know, because the last two times I played this, there was actually nothing on the moon. You could get a sample, but it was worth nothing. So, you know, this is a little bit of the kind of like gamble, but I guess it's kind of real life, because why are we doing all of this if there's no return on investment? If at least you can get minerals, then there is some return on investment. At the moment, the space program is just basically gobbling up money. And I was just reading an article about the new thing that they want to build in CERN, to build a larger collider. And the big question is, why should we invest in all of this money when we should also maybe invest in researching climate change and combating climate change? And if you went by this, then you shouldn't do manned spaceflight, because the returns on investment are practically zero, which is true. Of course, you don't get any monetary returns for sending someone into space, and even the knowledge gain may be not as deep as we would have hoped. So there is no way we can win the game now. We have 2 years left, and in those 2 years, we would not even make it to Mercury. But I hope you enjoyed this. I think this is a great game, and I will do a sit down and talk about it. And until such time, I wish you a pleasant rest of the day. Thank you. Bye-bye.